Hey guys, tonight we're traveling to a place where summer never ends, at least not in the way you'd hope. Imagine yourself standing in the middle of the Persian plateau, maybe around the 5th century BCE, when the Achaemenid Empire stretched. From the Indus River to the Aegean Sea, the air shimmers with heat, as if the sky itself is trying to melt. Your sandals stick to the baked earth. The scent of dust and salt hovers, dry enough to make your tongue ache. And yet somewhere, beneath all this burning light lies ice. You probably won't survive this heat wave on your own. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, go ahead and tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. Are you wrapped up under a blanket in a rainy city? Or are you also somewhere hot, imagining that chill of ancient Persian ice? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, steady hum. It's almost like a whispering desert wind we'll soon hear, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink against the glare, and in the distance, rising like a ghostly dome, from the sand stands something impossible, a mountain of mud brick, smooth and pale as bone, shaped like an inverted cone. It's taller than a two-story house and perfectly symmetrical. Its surface gleams faintly under the sun. This is a yakhchal, literally, ice pit. The Persians built them to do the most unlikely thing imaginable. Keep ice frozen through months of 40 degrees Celsius heat. From where you stand, the air ripples and the edges of the structure blur. But if you step closer, you feel it. A faint cool breath escaping from narrow vents near the top. It's a sigh, almost human. That's the wind slipping into channels that spiral downward, tearing the deserts. Chill from night into the heart of the dome. Inside, temperatures can drop below freezing, even when outside. The sand could fry an egg. You duck into the entrance, and the light dims instantly. The silence is almost perfect, broken only by a distant whistling wind, like a flute played, by the earth itself. The floor dips downward into a pit lined with thick clay and ash for insulation. It smells faintly of minerals and damp earth, almost comforting after the dry air outside. Archaeologists say these yakhchals were engineering marvels centuries ahead of their time. They combined thermal mass, evaporation, and airflow to create what was, in essence, a giant refrigerator. No electricity, no moving parts, just clever design and patience. You can imagine night after night in winter, workers hauling blocks of ice from nearby mountains or frozen streams, stacking them carefully in layers, insulating them with straw. By the time the heat of summer arrived, there would still be ice deep below ice that could be mixed with syrups, fruit juices, or rosewater to create something decadent enough for royalty. A modern scientist might call it passive cooling through evaporative convection. But to an ancient Persian engineer, it was a kind of quiet magic, a contract between air and earth. Step back outside for a moment. The desert stretches infinitely, golden and unbroken, except for the flickering shadow of a falcon circling overhead. The wind hums through the vents again, steady and low. It feels alive, like it's breathing. You wonder what it must have been like to stand here 1,000 years ago. Perhaps under a sky glowing with unfamiliar stars, waiting for the wind to turn just right. Maybe a young apprentice once stood where you are, hand pressed against the plaster, whispering to his master, "It's working." Maybe he was thinking of his family, how they'd taste snow in the middle of June. Historians still debate whether yakhchals were mainly for royal households or for the public. Some argue they stored not just ice, but butter, dates, and rose syrup. Others think they symbolize something spiritual, how human craft could challenge nature without defying it. After all, it wasn't about fighting the heat. It was about coaxing the air to do your bidding. You look again at the vents. The shape is precise angled toward prevailing winds, designed to guide the airflow through narrow shafts and across shallow pools. Every detail was considered. It's almost like the structure itself is breathing, pulling in warmth, exhaling coolness. There's a funny thought that flickers in your mind. Somewhere in ancient Persia, a nobleman was probably bragging to his guests about his new cold storage technology. Maybe he even said, "You won't believe it, I can keep snow fresh until the king's birthday." The first influencer of refrigeration, perhaps. The desert wind stirs again, brushing sand against your ankles. The sound is soft, rhythmic. You notice a cluster of date palms nearby, their fronds trembling slightly in the heat. Between them, a narrow channel of water glimmers faintly, almost like a mirage, but it's real. That's your next destination. The secret to how this ice could even exist here at all. It's not just the yakhchal that made it possible, but what lay hidden beneath the earth. You kneel beside the channel and run your fingers through the water. It's astonishingly cold. Where could it come from? There hasn't been rain here. In months, the answer lies underground, where miles of tunnels known as qanat snake through the desert, bringing mountain water across impossible distances. These were dug by hand, an entire underworld of silent canals, connecting life to places where life shouldn't exist. They made oases bloom, vineyards flourish, and yes, even ice endure as the sun sinks lower. You feel the first hint of evening cool against your neck. The dome of the yakhchal casts a long, perfect shadow over the sand, somewhere in the darkness. Below, the air continues to whisper, sliding through the vents like a secret message across time. You take one last look at the horizon. The desert hums softly, and the faint whistling wind carries through the vents again, a reminder of the miracle hiding beneath the surface. You follow the sound, it leads you downward, toward the shadowed mouth of a qanat tunnel, where the air smells faintly of wet clay and minerals. You'll crawl through the cool dark soon enough, tracing the water's path back to its hidden source. But for now, you pause. The last light of sunset paints the dome in gold. The ancient Persians might have called this the hour when the wind remembers winter. Tomorrow, if you can call it that, you'll descend underground, where the true secret of this desert ice begins. You crouch at the lip of the tunnel, the desert light fading behind you. Ahead, there's only a faint shimmer of reflected water somewhere deep below. The air turns instantly cooler, tinged with minerals and that rich, earthy scent you only smell. In places untouched by sunlight for centuries, it smells like old clay pots, stone dust, and memory. You duck your head, step inside, and the world of heat vanishes behind you like a forgotten dream at first. You hear nothing but your own breathing. Then, a soft plink, a drop of water hitting stone, another, then a faint gurgle. It sounds like someone exhaling through cupped hands. That's the qanat breathing. These underground qanats were Persia's arteries. Long before aqueducts arched across Rome, the Persians were tunneling through mountain rock, letting gravity itself do the work of irrigation. You follow one now, crouching low as the ceiling narrows. The walls glisten with damp clay, and every few steps, the floor dips into a trickle of flowing water. You pause beside one of the vertical shafts, narrow wells that rise toward pinpoints of light above. These were dug to allow air circulation and access for workers, mechanists, the tunnel diggers. They were the unsung engineers of empire, men who could sense underground water by touch, who listened to the mountain's pulse through stone. Some say they were half magicians, half laborers. Others said they had the patience of the earth itself. You rest your hand on the tunnel wall. It's cold and damp. The temperature difference makes your skin tingle. That's when you notice a small sound dripping into a clay bowl placed neatly beneath a slow leak from the ceiling. It's catching the runoff, drop by drop, keeping the passage floor dry. Someone's handiwork from long ago, perhaps replaced 100 times. Always the same shape, always the same purpose. The clay is smooth where hands have touched it. It's so that in the dead of summer, the air in these tunnels could drop to near freezing. Ancient laborers might spend entire days underground, their bodies adjusting to the chill, their ears attuned to subtle echoes, changes in water pitch that meant collapse, blockage, or success. When you stop and listen carefully, you can almost imagine them, the rhythmic scraping of chisels, the flicker of oil lamps, the murmur of men speaking in Farsi or Parthian, words lost to history that modern historians still debate how the first qanat systems began. Some think they were invented by necessity, by farmers desperate to survive in a dying oasis. Others believe they came from mountain cultures who learned to guide melting snow. But the real marvel isn't when they were built, it's how precise they were. Without lasers or levels, ancient Persian engineers maintained a gradient so shallow that water flowed gently but never flooded. A mistake of just a few inches could ruin months of labor. You keep walking, following the quiet current. The tunnel opened suddenly into a subterranean chamber, lit by thin shafts of sunlight filtering down through multiple vents. The beams catch suspended droplets midair, turning them into drifting jewels. You step into the glow and it feels almost holy. This must have been one of the qanat's maintenance caverns where builders rested, ate, and, sometimes, according to legend, planted small gardens in clay pots to honor Anahita, the goddess of water and fertility. Somewhere above, the desert still roars with heat. But here you could almost forget the world. The air hums gently with life. You kneel by the stream, dip your fingers in, and the chill makes you shiver pleasantly. You bring the water to your lips. It tastes clean, impossibly pure, slightly metallic, like rain hitting new copper. You imagine that this same water will soon flow through surface canals, nourishing date palms and pomegranate trees, eventually reaching the yakhchal where blocks of ice will rest on straw. The thought connects everything. The unseen labor below and the luxury above. A small lizard scurries across the stone, its tiny claws tapping. You smile, proof that even down here, life adapts. Somewhere deeper in the network, voices echo faintly. Maybe real, maybe memory. The mucanis used to sing while they worked. Not for joy, exactly more to keep rhythm and fend off silence. Their songs were passed down like blueprints. You can almost hear one now, a simple chant about mountains giving their rains to the thirsty. When you close your eyes, the cool air brushes your face, and you realize it's the same whistling wind you felt earlier above ground, just muted and dampened. The qanat breathes it from one world to another. The wind enters the desert vents, flows through chambers like this one, and exits through the yakhchal vents, creating that perfect airflow system. You laugh softly to yourself. The ancient Persians built the planet's first climate control system, and we think we invented sustainable design. Somewhere, an old engineer would be rolling his eyes as you continue through the passage. You notice faint carvings along one wall, geometric lines forming a pattern like a starburst. It could be decorative, or perhaps it marks a confluence point where multiple qanats joined. You brush the dust gently, and under your fingertips, the grooves feel precise and deliberate. You decide to leave it undisturbed when you finally emerge. From the tunnel mouth, the world has changed. The night has fallen, and the desert air above feels almost gentle now. You find yourself in an underground garden, or what was once one sunken courtyard lined with stone walls, overgrown with herbs. This is a paradisa, the ancient word from which paradise came. The Persians built them as cool sanctuaries of shade, often attached to qanat exits where water bubbled gently into small pools. You step through the broken archway, brushing against lavender and mint. The scent hits you instantly, cool, green, and sharp. A few fireflies blink lazily above the water's surface. You can hear the faint murmuring of water flowing beneath the floor, feeding the garden from below. It's easy to imagine how this might have looked centuries ago. Mosaic tiles reflecting lamplight, the air fragrant with citrus blossoms, servants carrying chilled sherbet to guests reclining beneath cypress trees. They would have felt the same breeze you do now, cooled by water running underfoot. The luxury wasn't just in the drink. It was in defying the heat and creating comfort from scarcity. You sit beside the pool and trail your hand in the water. Again, there's that bowl still in your mind, the clay bowl catching droplets, a perfect image of patience. Every drop mattered. Every drop was saved. Somewhere beyond the garden walls, laughter drifts on the air. Faint music, a flute perhaps. The sound seems to call you forward toward another kind of gathering. You rise and follow it up a sloping path lit by moonlight. The fragrance of mint still clinging to your sleeves. At the top of the path, the city of Yazd glimmers faintly on the horizon, its domes, its wind catchers, and somewhere among them, the courtyard where the first taste of ice awaits. The city of Yazd spreads before you like a tapestry of pale stone and quiet motion. The moonlight dusts every dome and wind catcher with silver. You can hear the soft laughter of families in the distance, the rhythmic splash of water in a courtyard. Pool, and the low hum of night insects in the dry grass beyond the walls. Tonight, the desert isn't a place of punishment. It's a stage for a miracle. You follow the laughter through narrow alleys that twist between mud brick walls, their edges glowing faintly under oil lamps hung from carved wooden brackets. The air smells faintly of rosewater and cardamom, drifting from unseen kitchens. Somewhere, a lute plays slow, serene, slightly melancholy. Like it knows this night will fade with dawn. A servant in a pale tunic passes you, balancing a tray of small crystal bowls covered with cloth. Steam curls from one bowl, cold vapor rising into the warm night. You recognize it at once ice. Ice, born from the breath of mountains and the labor of hidden tunnels, carried to the heart of the city. You follow him through a gate into a courtyard. Alive with color and sound, this is the ice feast. Celebration held once a year when the first batch of preserved ice is brought out from the yakhchal. The nobles call it the veiling of cold. To them, it's more than refreshment. It's proof of mastery. Proof that the empire can summon winter even when the stars boil overhead. The courtyard is encircled by cypress trees and lit by hundreds of oil lamps floating on shallow pools. Cushions are laid out in rings around. Raised stone platform. At its center stands a crystal bowl of rosewater sherbet, the ice within glistening like moonlit marble. The scent of roses, honey, and saffron fills the air, so thick it almost clings to your tongue before you even taste it. You take a seat among the crowd. To your left, a group of musicians tune their instruments. The soft plucking of a cedar. The sigh of an A flute. To your right, an old merchant is explaining the history of the feast to a young boy, perhaps his grandson. Each drop of this, he says, tapping his glass of sherbet, began its journey in the mountains. Men carved tunnels through rock so water could breathe. They caught winter and taught it patience. The boy giggles. Winter can't be taught. The merchant smiles. Ah, but it can be tricked. You can't help smiling too. There's a tenderness to it, the idea of humanity bargaining with nature, not conquering it, but coaxing it with patience and invention. A young woman beside you catches your attention. She's holding a tray of small sweet almond pastries, fig stuffed with honey, and something new to you. Thin curls of frozen syrup, translucent and delicate as spun glass. When you bite into one, it melts instantly, flooding your mouth with sweetness and coolness all at once. You can almost hear the hiss of sugar against your teeth, like frost breaking. It's dizzying. Historians today might call this the ancestor of Faluda, that ancient Persian frozen dessert made with vermicelli noodles, syrup, and lime juice. But here it feels less like dessert and more like sorcery. The host, a nobleman, draped in embroidered silk stands and lifts a golden goblet. The crowd quiets, even the musicians pausing mid-note. Tonight, he says, we drink to the engineers and the diggers, to those who carried the mountain's heart beneath our feet. We drink to the wind that remembers winter. The phrase catches in your mind, the wind that remembers winter. You've heard it before. Wasn't that what the engineer whispered by the yakhchal dome? Or was it your imagination then too? Everyone drinks. The rosewater sherbet is cool and fragrant, the flavor unfolding in waves floral first, then the sharpness of ice, then the mellow sweetness of honey. It tastes of effort and patience. You can feel the faint sting of cold travel down your throat, and for a moment, your body forgets it's in the desert. A few courtiers exchange quiet boasts about how long their estates can keep their ice. One man claims 3 full moons. Another insists he has a secret chamber that stays cold year-round. Someone jokes that if the king could trap the sun as well as he traps snow, he'd live forever. The laughter ripples softly through the courtyard. The musicians start again, the tune rising and falling like the hum of a distant qanat. You close your eyes and imagine a flow of water deep below cool, endless, carrying echoes of the same music through stone. There's a callback in the sound, a whisper of the clay bowl catching droplets far beneath the earth. The rhythm of patience measured in drops. You realize the same principle guides everything here. Slow work, careful flow, nothing wasted. The nobleman turns to a scholar seated beside him, a tall man with a white beard and ink-stained fingers. Tell us, the host says, how do you explain this miracle? How does the air itself make cold? The scholar strokes his beard, half smiling. The ancients would say it's a gift of Anahita, goddess of rivers. The philosophers of our age might say it's the nature of breath. When the desert exhales, it cools what it cannot keep. Someone laughs. So the desert is alive? Of course, says the scholar. It dreams in sand and wakes in wind. You sip your sherbet. Again. The flavor has shifted slightly as the ice melts. Now there's a faint hint of mint, like the herbs that grew beside the qanat garden. The scent blends with the air, and suddenly you can almost see it, the entire system, from mountain stream to tunnel, from bowl to breath. All of it working together like one vast living organism. As the feast continues, servants refill glasses and bring new tray-sliced melons, dates, honey-soaked bread. A group of poets recite verses comparing snowflakes to pearls and ice to captured moonlight. You find yourself relaxing deeply, the sound of their voices blending into the gentle music. The night feels infinite, but eventually the moon tilts westward and the lamps begin to dim. One by one, guests drift away, carrying their last bits of ice home in small covered jars, hoping to keep the cool for just a few hours longer. You remain seated as the musicians pack their instruments. The courtyard empties until only the scholar remains. He glances your way, eyes kind. Do you know, he says softly, that every piece of ice we made this year will melt before the next moon? And yet we make it again. Why? You ask. He smiles faintly. Because it reminds us of winter and of time. Some things are meant to melt. The phrase lingers as you leave the courtyard. The streets are empty now, the air warm again, but not unbearably so. Somewhere in the distance, you hear that whistling wind threading through Yazd's wind catchers. Like a sigh of satisfaction, you pass a small shop where the scholar's words echo again, meant to melt. Inside, you glimpse scrolls and diagrams, sketches of domes and qanats, drawn in careful ink lines. Perhaps you think someone will try to capture that knowledge before it melts away too. As you walk on, the thought leads you forward into the next century, into the scholar's lamp-lit study, where memory and curiosity meet. The night around you dissolves into parchment and lamplight. The soft desert air turns into the musty stillness of a scholar's chamber, heavy with ink and sandalwood smoke. You're in Nishapur, centuries after that moonlit ice feast in Yazd. The world outside has changed, empires risen and fallen, but the wind that remembers winter still flows. Now, only through manuscripts and whispered theories. You sit quietly as a scholar leans over his desk. His name has faded from history, but the legend of his obsession lingers. His ink-stained fingers trace the curve of a sketch of a yakhchal, drawn in delicate lines, domes, vents, and channels labeled with tiny, precise Persian script. By the faint glow of his oil lamp, you can see he's written in 2 columns, one of poetry, one of calculation. He's not just trying to understand how ice survived in the desert. He's trying to understand why it mattered. You can hear the faint hiss of the lamp as it burns, the crackle of its wick like a slow heartbeat. The light is golden and unsteady, throwing a shadow across the walls, lined with scrolls. Each one represents a lifetime of questions, geometry, wind, stars, and the soul. He mutters as he works. Cold is not the absence of heat, it is the memory of stillness. He frowns, dips his pen again. The nib scratches the parchment softly, almost musically. You lean closer and catch a few more phrases. Airflow by inclination, heat drawn down by moisture, and scribbled almost angrily in the margin, the hand of God in condensation. He's not the only one who's tried. Scholars from Baghdad, from Ray, even from Andalusia have copied fragments of these ideas, blending science and spirit, experiment and prayer. Some claim that when warm air kisses the cool walls of the dome, the heat itself transforms into dew, giving the earth back what the sky took. Others say the yakhchals geometry holds divine ratios. A secret language of balance. You watch as the scholar dips a small brush into a bowl of water and sprinkles a few drops across his notes. He's testing evaporation, you realize, measuring how quickly the droplets vanish under the lamp's heat. The air, he murmurs, has a thirst of its own. He pauses, listening. Outside, through a narrow window, you hear the desert wind whistling. The same soft note from centuries ago, threading through time like a living ghost. He sighs, sets down his pen, and gazes at a small clay bowl on the table. Yes, the same kind of bowl that once caught droplets in the Qanat tunnel. It's filled halfway with water, the surface trembling with the faintest ripple. He places his hand above it, feeling the invisible cool rising. His eyes soften. You see, he says, speaking to no one or perhaps to you, it's not that. The Persians made ice in summer. It's that they made patience visible. They showed the wind how to rest. There's a faint smile at the corners of his mouth. The lamplight flickers, and you catch a glimpse of something else on the table. A thin silver coin, tarnished and smooth, engraved with the faint outline of a falcon. Maybe a token from Yazd, maybe nothing at all. But he reaches for it often, turning it between his fingers as if it helps him think. He reaches for a second scroll and unrolls it carefully. It's older, more fragile, the ink browned by centuries. Inside are verses, poems, not formulas. Some of them are his, others copied from long-gone poets who found divinity in small details. The shape of a drop. The scent of wet dust after rain. He begins to recite softly, his voice barely more than a murmur. The wind has no name, yet it remembers the cold. The stone has no heart, yet it shelters the snow. You close your eyes and listen. The rhythm is slow, hypnotic. The words feel like falling water measured eternal. You can almost hear the echo of qanat tunnels below, each word a droplet striking clay. But this scholar isn't just a dreamer. You notice a wooden rack beside his desk, hung with thin copper rods and parchment strips marked with degrees. He's building an early thermometer, though he doesn't yet have the word for it. His experiments involve cooling air through evaporative basins, trying to reproduce on a desk what a yakhchal does with wind and sand. He shakes his head, scribbles a note. My hand is too warm for truth. He laughs at himself, a small breathy sound. The human hand always interferes, he says. Perhaps that's why nature hides her simplest laws in the desert, so we must learn humility to find them. It's easy to forget how fragile scholarship was in this era. You glance at the door, beyond it lies a city alive with markets and minarets, yet only a handful of people can read what he writes. Tomorrow, perhaps his work will be copied, mistranslated, or lost to fire. But for now, it lives, breathing quietly in the lamplight. You watch him make one final notation at the bottom of the page. The wind remembers. He underlines it once, firmly. Then he sets down his pen, extinguishes the lamp with a sigh, and the room falls into darkness. For a long time, you hear only the soft ticking of cooling metal, the distant hum of the wind outside. The smell of oil and parchment lingers in the air. You can almost feel the ghost of warmth leaving the room, replaced by that cool, velvety stillness of night that you step toward the window. Outside, the stars sprawl across the sky, and for a moment, the city below seems to shimmer with the same geometry as the yakhchal dome's patterns of order and chaos. You wonder if the scholar sees it too, even in his sleep, the way everything connects, from droplet to wind, from stone to soul. Somewhere, a rooster calls faintly, signaling dawn. The first rays of sunlight pierce the horizon, striking the edge of a nearby dome. The scholar stirs, waking just enough to mumble his final thought into the morning air. Perhaps, he whispers, the ice never left us. It just learned to. Hide inside the air. You turn away from the window. The room glows now, pale gold, the manuscript stacked like small mountains. This moment won't last, his words, like the ice will melt into memory. But before they fade completely, they'll inspire someone else centuries later to seek that same mystery again. And that's where you'll go next, back to the desert, where the wind still carries the scholar's whisper, waiting to be heard once more. The desert calls you back with the same steady breath that began it all. One moment, you're surrounded by parchment and lamplight. The next, sand, wind, and starlight stretch to every horizon. You stand in modern Kerman province, Iran, near a restored yakhchal that looks almost exactly like the one you saw centuries ago. Its smooth clay curves are lit softly by amber lanterns, part of a heritage site that locals now protect with quiet. Pride dot the air is cool, though the day was blistering. You can still feel the ghost of heat clinging to the rocks, but as the night deepens, the wind slips through the vents, singing the same faint whistle you've carried through time. The world smells of dry dust, clay, and unexpectedly tea. Somewhere nearby, a small group of caretakers sit cross-legged, pouring steaming cups of chai golab, rosewater tea, into chipped glasses. They gesture for you to join them. You sit down on woven mat. The earth feels solid beneath you, almost warm like sitting on the skin of something ancient that's still alive. One of the caretakers, a woman with sunburned cheeks and a patient smile, stirs her tea, slowly. Do you know, she says, this dome has been here almost 2,000 years. It was buried, forgotten, and then found again under a layer of sand. My grandfather helped restore it. She pauses, glancing toward the structure. The moonlight catches its curves, turning them almost silver. We don't use it for ice anymore, she adds. But the air inside it still feels like winter. You nod. That phrase again, the wind remembers winter. It's followed you like a melody you can't forget. The woman continues, telling you how engineers studied the design to understand its natural cooling. They found that even after centuries of disuse, the yakhchal's interior remains 10-2. 15 degrees cooler than the desert outside. The principles, evaporation, insulation, airflow are now inspiring new sustainable architecture in Iran. Houses built with clay domes and underground channels to cool air naturally. The past. Breathing into the future, you sip your tea. The rosewater is faint, sweet, and floral, the same taste that lingered in the royal courtyard of Yazd. For a moment, time folds neatly around you like parchment. You can almost hear the scholar's pen scratching again, the merchants laughing, the Makani's hammer tapping deep below. One of the caretakers stands and gestures toward the entrance of the dome. Come, he says softly. It's open tonight. You step inside. The air drops immediately, washing over you like a sigh. The sound of the outside world fades, the distant hum of the city, the whisper of sand, and what remains is pure stillness. You run your fingers along the interior wall. The plaster feels cold and faintly damp, a texture like stone polished by centuries of wind dot light filters in through the upper vents, thin and silvery. You can see faint carvings near the base replicas, the caretaker explains, of the old inscriptions, found on fragments of ancient domes, spirals, stars, and lines that might represent flowing air. In one spot, a few words are etched in modern Farsi, the wind that remembers. It's poetic, but also true. The wind has been the thread through every age of this story. It carried cold air into the yakhchal. It sang through qanat tunnels, cooled the scholar's study, and now hums through the modern vents. It never forgot its lesson, that you close your eyes, standing in that dim space. The air presses gently against your skin, neither cold nor warm, just right, like balance made physical. It feels as though you're standing at the exact meeting point between human will and nature's patience. There's a plaque near the entrance, hand-lettered in both Persian and English. It reads, "In every generation, there are those who teach the wind to rest." The caretaker chuckles softly. My daughter wrote that, he says. She studies architecture in Tehran. She says one day, Cities will cool themselves, the way this old dome does, quietly. You smile. She might be right. You wander outside again. The wind greets you immediately, brushing sand across your ankles. The desert night has that strange clarity where sound carries forever. Somewhere far away, you hear a car engine. Somewhere closer, the rustle of a fox. And between them both, the steady hum of air moving through vents, a soft, natural music that has played for thousands of years. You walk a little farther toward a low ridge where the sand meets a dry riverbed. The sky is enormous. Stars scatter like flakes of crushed ice across the darkness. You breathe deeply, and the air feels alive, cool, clean, faintly perfumed with the memory of roses. That it strikes you how this story was never about luxury or even survival. It was about listening. The Persians didn't force the desert to give them ice. They asked the wind to cooperate. Every detail of their system, the angles, the materials, the timing was a conversation with nature. That's why it endured. You think of that clay bowl catching droplets underground, of the scholar whispering to his lamp, of the girl who etched her inscription by the door. All of them tiny acts of faith in something invisible dot the wind shifts. You hear that unmistakable whistle again, rising from the dome's vents. It sounds like someone exhaling through time. Maybe it's the same breath that once cooled a king's sherbet, or fluttered a scholar's manuscript, or brushed against your ear when this story first began. You turn back toward the dome, and for a fleeting moment you imagine the air glowing. Faintly inside, shimmering with all its remembered winters, the woman from before waves from the tea mat, her voice soft. You should come back in winter. It feels like spring inside then. You nod. The irony isn't lost on you. That's the essence of Persian ingenuity, turning opposites into allies. You stand quietly for a while longer. The sand shifts, the stars fade slightly as dawn approaches. Somewhere beneath your feet, old qanat tunnels still exist, collapsed. In places forgotten as others, but alive in the imagination. Water might still flow through some of them when the snow melts in the distant Alborz mountains. And perhaps for just a few weeks each year, the wind remembers enough to chill that. Water again, you close your eyes and breathe in. The air tastes faintly metallic, faintly sweet like the memory of ice melting into, or OSE. ER dot in that breath, all the centuries blur. The apprentice building his first vent, the banquet in Yazd, the scholar's lamplight, the restoration, the inscription. It all folds neatly into one quiet truth. Cold and heat, patience and time, they were never enemies. They were partners in a long, slow dance. The wind passes over you one last time, steady and kind. And as the sun rises, painting the dome in gold, you realize the story isn't about how Persians sweetened ice without sugar. It's about how they taught the world to find sweetness in endurance, in listening, and in the slow, miraculous work of keeping something cool beneath a burning sky. The wind whistles through the vents once more soft, eternal, satisfied. And now, as the story settles, let the wind quiet itself. You can almost feel the temperature drop in the room around you, the kind of soft, steady cool that the Persians spent centuries learning to hold. Breathe it in, slow and deep. Feel how it moves along your skin, how your body adjusts, how the noise of your day fades just a little more. You're lying somewhere between worlds now, half in the modern night, half among the domes of Yazd. Maybe you can still hear the faint hum, that ancient wind, or the distant clinking of sherbet glasses from a feast long gone. It's all right to let them blur together. That's what stories are for, to make time soft, to make space gentle. Imagine, just for a moment, that you're inside that yakhchal. The air is cool, perfectly still. The walls curve around you like an embrace. The sound of the outside world doesn't reach here, only the faint sigh of air moving through vents, whispering secrets from long ago. You feel light, unhurried, weightless. There's a bowl in front of you, the same clay bowl from the tunnels, filled with cool water that catches the lamplight. A drop falls, ripples spread, and then everything is still again. That stillness belongs to you now. You can keep it whenever you need it. Let the night air guide you down into sleep, slow and deep. The way the qanat water once flowed through the mountain. The wind remembers winter. And tonight it remembers you. End of script. Sweet dreams.